Welcome to the Feeling Loudly podcast, a show about the power and magic of emotion, explored through the lens of astrology, divination, and art. I'm your host, Jana. I'm an astrologer, a tarot reader, Akashic Records reader, poet, and witch, and I'm here to help you feel your feels. Hey everybody, if you're listening to this tonight, I just want to give you a heads up that I didn't have my microphone properly in front of my face for like the first half of this episode. So it's pretty quiet for the first stretch, and that's annoying, but I don't want to re-record it, so I'm just going to let it roll. But just a notice that it does get louder at some point. So if you turn the volume up loud to hear it, just know that when I say, oh my gosh, my microphone wasn't in front of my face, that's your cue to turn the volume down because it's about to get louder. Okay, I just don't want to harm anyone's ears, and I wanted to give you a heads up. So thank you and enjoy. Hi all, welcome to Tarot Tuesday, where we dig into a tarot card for the episode and get add-on messages from the Oracle deck, Prism Oracle in this case, and song messages to complement the meaning of the card. Before we jump in, I want to again remind everyone that my specialized Akashic Records readings and some of my astrology readings that are more focused and niche will be disappearing come July. So if you're interested in booking with me, I'd recommend doing so before the end of June, and you can book up to 60 days out. If you want to support this podcast, you can also become a patron to make ongoing donations that also get you extra perks and content and all that good stuff. And you can find the links to check out each of my tiers below. They start at $4 a month, so it's pretty affordable, and you get extra content and goodies and stuff. Okay, let's jump in. So our card of the week is the Seven of Pentacles. Holy shit, the relief I felt in not seeing a sword was really profound. But it's interesting because the Seven of Pentacles is one of those cards that I have sort of an impersonal relationship with. Like, I know its meaning on an intellectual level. When I get it in a reading, I feel steadied by it often, but I don't have a particularly emotional reaction to it. And I think that's appropriate for this card. Some people might, but for me, it's a steadying card. It's a sensible card. And it's funny because our song actually has the word sensible in it. It goes, it's sensible, it's sensible. And I think that's really on point. The Seven of Pentacles is connected to Saturn in Taurus, and there's this deep sensibility and practicality that comes with it. It's a card of focus and patience and trust and waiting for the work that we put in to pay off, often being more forward thinking and deliberate with our choices and our actions, and trusting that we will experience harvest. And, you know, it can actually represent harvest itself often. Like the Seven of Pentacles might be a moment where we actually see something come to fruition that we've been working hard on and sort of like puttering away at for a long time. But often, too, it's like a card that reminds us to be patient and reminds us of the promise of future harvest, the promise of our work paying off, the promise of us seeing dividends and seeing the manifestation of everything that we've been hammering away at. And so paired with our Oracle card, which is Trust, which feels really perfect tonight, I'm getting this message overall about understanding that a lot of the work that we, as in me and anyone who's listening to this who resonates with it, that the work and the efforting you've been putting in, perhaps in the Taurus house in your natal chart, might be relevant, or even any of the earth houses in your chart, looking at Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn, that you will really begin to see the manifestation of that effort. It's almost like it's been happening behind the scenes, and it's becoming truer and truer, and you're becoming more trusting of self and more trusting maybe of your guides. And that can be a really strong message with the Seven of Pentacles for me too is sort of like this recognition of the bigger picture. Like, say you're a farmer and you plant the seeds and you tend to the land and you water the crops and you trim them and you put all of this labor and work and effort into bringing something into reality. But the truth is that you only are responsible or in control of a certain amount of the conditions that actually lead to growth. You can't control the weather. You can't control the amount of sunlight or the amount of rain. You can do other things to try to tweak the conditions and in order to kind of like manipulate the conditions to get them to support the well-being of the crop. But ultimately, again, you can't control the weather. And so if you're doing something more organically, really in any facet of life, that's true too. There are always going to be conditions that we can't control, but we focus on what we can control. And that sort of practicality and focus is very Seven of Pentacles. And part of trust is trusting your own capabilities, trusting your own competence, and also trusting your guides or the seasons or nature or whatever to do what it has to do in order to support your blessings and to support your yield. And so I'm getting this like, it's interesting, I'm switching into kind of like reading for y'all, which is not usually how I structure these episodes, but it feels right now. That there's this sort of element of self-reliance that I feel sometimes comes through the Seven of Pentacles, but it's on the heels of the Six of Pentacles, which is a card that's very much about generosity and sometimes reciprocity. Sometimes it's like giving and receiving in kind, receiving blessings from others, receiving generosity, or being generous with other people. And so I think it's really interesting that when we move into the Seven of Pentacles and we're greeted with this message of trust and patience, that there's something here that's been preceded by generosity. There's some sort of act of kindness, an act of sharing, and a recognition of abundance that then leads to blessings. And how sometimes when, we're trying to maybe generate more abundance in any area of our life, one beautiful practice can be to focus on gratitude for what we do have. And that's something that's come through for me many times in my life. And I try to like walk the really delicate line of talking about manifestation without talking about manifestation, because it's very loaded and there's a lot of like new agey, bypassy stuff that dismisses the very real lived reality of many, many people who live in poverty, who live in like various forms of systemic oppression and don't have the means, the access, the resources, the tools that could even like open up the doors or even give them access to see the doors that they would need to open in order to access the same level of privilege that some people are just born into. That said, there are some foundational practices that we can do to support ourselves in aligning more effectively with what it is we want to bring in. And so it's one of those like, don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. Like, speaking to the energy of the Seven of Pentacles, keep it sensible, but also don't dismiss the very real generative power of simple acts like speaking words of gratitude, like expressing gratitude to the people in your life, like expressing gratitude to the earth, like making offerings to the earth, making offerings to your guides, to your ancestors, to the folks who have walked on and cultivated the land that you now live on and sit on and work on and play on, and all of these things, that these acts are meaningful. And however you want to classify that action, some people in more of like the new agey circles might call it manifestation, where other people might talk about being in right relationship with the land, or in right relationship with the unseen, with our ancestors, with those who've crossed over, with the dead, with the living, with animal spirits, with living animals, with plant spirits, with plants. Like, there are all of these really remarkable ways that we can attune to nature, and I'm speaking kind of animism in a way here too. And something actually that you guys have probably heard me mention Marta on here before, who is a lovely psychic and Reiki practitioner and human who's in our Discord. And Marta recently posted about how they kind of see animism as a form of spiritual protection too, and how they've often noticed if they made an offering to the land or to the spirits of the home they were occupying, that they experienced a lot more spiritual protection from doing that. And that's something I've experienced too. As a fourth house moon square Pluto in the sixth, ritual around home is like a really important and also sensitive topic when it comes to my chart because of that square between my fourth house moon and my sixth house Pluto. And it's really powerful for me to do like very practical magic to protect my home and to protect my body and to give to my ancestors. It's something I do almost every single day. Most weeks it is every day, making offerings to my ancestors and making offerings to the deities that I work with, and connecting with the land, connecting with the river, connecting with the ground beneath me, with the trees. And when I do those things on a regular basis and when I'm in harmony with my environment in that way, I notice such a remarkable difference in my well-being across the board, from my mental health to my physical health to my energy levels to my ability to get work done to my finances to my relationships. Like every facet of my life improves when I focus on being in better relationship, if not right relationship, with my environment and with the spirits that occupy it, and you know, all of the other creatures and critters and everything that I mentioned. And so it's not perfect, right? And the aim is not perfection, but this feels like an important message today because I feel that for a lot of us, there's this sort of shift into a more grounded form of spirituality and a spiritual practices that help us root in what is, that don't lead us to bypassing the very, I was going to say real reality, the very real reality that we all experience, and that is, you know, the horrors that we witness and experience in this life and the suffering that exists in this life. We don't have to negate any of that or pretend that that doesn't exist in order to be spiritual. And in fact, it's the opposite. In order to be aligned and to have a form of rooted spirituality, we really need to be rooted in what is real and to be rooted in the 3D. And I had an interesting conversation with other people in our Discord about this over the weekend, how some of us were talking about being irritated by like spiritual buzzwords, and a lot of those are kind of appropriated from like different cultures and then translated into New Ageism and become just kind of like meaningless jargon that people share about ascension. And I could name off all this stuff, but there's so many. Oh my God. I just realized my freaking microphone was all the way away from my face and I had my phone in front of my face instead. So you're going to hear a shift in the audio here, which is really interesting. And I kind of want to pause and make sure it wasn't too quiet. Oh no. Maybe that's important in some way. I don't know. I'll come back to it. But it's interesting that like the microphone was like a foot away from my face, facing the opposite direction. And then as soon as I started talking about like spiritual jargon, I brought the microphone closer to my face. Whatever. Maybe I'm reading too much into it. But yeah, we were having a conversation about like buzzwords and all this stuff and how it can be frustrating when you encounter jargon that feels kind of meaningless and not like rooted in lived experience or rooted in authenticity or truth. And, you know, it came off of like a Threads discussion that involved a lot of kind of bypassy language that just wasn't super grounded. And I think that an antidote to a lot of that is getting back in touch with the mystical nature of the 3D and of the material world. And I go on this tangent in part because I'm realizing how really beautiful and spiritual the Seven of Pentacles actually is. You think about the beauty in a day of work, the beauty in tending to your crops, if you're actually a farmer, and this applies more literally, the beauty of like tending to the plants and flowers in your environment, the beauty of caring for a companion animal or for a loved one, or doing the tasks that need to be done around the house, even if they're mundane. Sometimes that is the most powerful action that you can take to get back in line. And as a 12th house person who often, and you know, I have a lot of Piscean flavors in my chart. And so I have this tendency to kind of want to go toward the ethereal and the mystical. But my Taurus placements and other aspects of my chart bring me back down to earth frequently and consistently. And they'll ask me to reground myself and to not get lost in the abyss and float away. That the most grounded and true form of spirituality is one that can live among us and live with us in the 3D reality that we inhabit. And so this card, again, it's coming to life for me in a new way. And Saturn in Taurus can be a very sort of literal placement. Like I want to focus on and prioritize what is real and what I can touch and taste and feel and see and smell and all of those like sensual experiences of Taurus. Yet Saturn is also a timekeeper and also this planet that is, you know, of course it's divine, it's a celestial body, but within us, it can help us to mature and graduate into new levels of spiritual devotion. And Saturn teaches us that our responsibilities and tending to what matters can itself be incredibly spiritual. And so I'm thinking, like, I just took a shower tonight and I felt so good. And I was like, damn, I haven't taken like a good hot shower in a minute. And it was such a simple ritual to complete, but I felt so much more alive and vital and strong after that. And that itself was the answer to this message that I got days ago about Olympia and needing to complete this like spiritual cleansing. And I was thinking in my head, like, well, what do I have to do? Should I do like a spiritual bath? Should I do a ritual, a spell? Should I like what needs to be done here? And actually the only thing that needed to be done was me taking a shower. Like that was it. And when I entered the shower with this intention of like feeling cleansed and feeling good, it delivered. And that was a practical answer to a more mystical question. And I think that's often the case, right? Like sometimes sweeping the floors can be the most effective form of energetic cleansing. Sometimes throwing out the trash can be the most effective form of cleansing. Sometimes like drinking water, like there are all of these really essential, rooted, material, 3D, practical ways that we can get back in touch. And I think the Seven of Pentacles draws us into that message tonight and reminds us to also trust our intuition. Like when I went into that shower tonight, I could have been like, wait, no, this isn't enough. Like I was told I need to do cleansing, like this obviously isn't it, but there was something within my gut that told me that it was. And so I trusted it. And in that trust, we also get the payoff. Like often our trust is our energetic investment. It's like if you're gonna do spell work, but you're distrusting your power, that spell is probably not going to be as effective because it's your power and your faith and your belief and your trust in yourself that kind of morphs together to create the potency of the magic. And so cultivating trust might actually be one of the most effective ways to grow as a person right now. Cultivating trust by just simply listening to what comes through when you tune into yourself and specifically tuning into yourself instead of seeking so many answers externally. And I think that's actually one of the messages of this oracle card. I'll go ahead and read the description. When this card comes up in a reading, it's a sign to start trusting yourself. We often seek advice from outside sources and people we trust. The reality, though, is that most of the time, deep down inside, you know what you need to do. Have the confidence to trust in yourself and your own sense of self-governance. Ultimately, you can make your own decisions. And man, is that super resonant for me right now. Just like an hour ago, I was at my altar asking for advice on a situation. And then I pulled some cards for myself and I was getting mixed messages. And I was like, all right, we're in the middle of a lot of Neptune shit right now. Like, I don't think that I can trust the confusing insights that are coming through from the tarot right now. So I need to back away and go back to myself and go back to my knowing and my body. And regardless of whether or not you have Taurus planets or angles in Taurus in your natal chart, there is a sort of wisdom that we can all glean from Taurus, which is that often our bodies are our greatest oracles. And the sensations and the feelings that we experience can be our guideposts toward our truth. And so Seven of Pentacles work for all of us right now, or some of us, whoever this lands for, trust yourself, might be to come back to the body as an oracle, might be to turn away from other forms of knowing that are clouding our judgment or confusing us or adding a bunch of psychic noise, and to come back to the body as the grounding force, and to come back to the earth. And maybe that means sticking your tootsies in the dirt and going outside, or sticking your hands in water, doing something that helps you get into your body. And I'm feeling the hands, especially, like something that helps you get into your hands and to really sense with your hands. Something I don't think I've talked about on here before is that for me, often I'll get psychic hits through my hands. Like my left hand in particular will sort of twitch when I'm getting a yes. And it's something that freaked me out a little bit when it first started years ago. But now it's like such a trusty form of knowing for me. And the power of the hands in particular feels important because they sort of act as these antenna, or these, like, I don't know, what do I want to call them? I'm asking my guides. They're saying receptacles, but that's not really the word that I want. Receivers. Okay, they're saying receivers. So they act as these like receivers or antenna that help us attune to the energy of the divine and help us receive messages. And often if you're meditating or like doing whatever, if you're sitting in a meditative posture, sometimes meditation instructors or yoga teachers will invite you to place your palms on your knees, or place the tops of your hands on your knees with your palms up in the receptive posture or in the receptive position. And that's in part because when our hands are open in that way, we're in the mode of receiving. It's like if you were to place your hand out for someone to hand you something, your palm would be open to them. And so there's something here about switching into a posture of receptivity and allowing our blessings to flow to us, especially if we've already put in the work. And again, this isn't bypassy. This isn't like, oh, I'm not going to do any work, but I'm going to expect to just have $1 million plop into my lap. Or I'm not going to do anything to connect with people, but I'm just going to expect that the perfect partner will show up at my door. Not saying it can't happen. It could happen. That's probably more realistic than the $1 million thing. Maybe it's a delivery person, who knows? But like putting it out there, and even if it's making some sort of energetic gesture or defining the qualities that you want in a partner and then opening up to receiving that, or, God forbid, getting on a dating app if you have to, or like going to a coffee shop or whatever. It often starts with the intention and then the action. And then that's when you kind of open the door and you switch into that receptive pose and allow something to come toward you and to magnetize it in a way. And so this involves an element of trust, because often we want to keep on pushing even after we've done the groundwork that we need to do in order for something to flourish. But if we're to keep like working the land, or if we're to, overwater the crops, or like put too much artificial light on them to try to get them to grow, we're kind of overdoing it. And there comes a time when we have to step back and say, okay, enough now. Like, I've done what I need to do, and now I can leave it, and I can trust that there are also unseen or seen forces that are working on my behalf in order to bring this into fruition, in order to bring this into reality. So there's this collaborative effort and this collaborative work that we do with the divine and with nature and often with other people in order to bring things into reality. And part of trust is also trusting other people, other spirits, and other forces to do their work too. And wow, I just got a personal little hit about something that I was asking about right before I sat down to record this, which is like, that is a direct message for me, needing to trust. I've done my work and needing to trust my guides to support me and protect me and aid me along my path too. So maybe that's relevant for someone else out there. I'm going to switch over to our song for this card, which is The Bay by Metronomy. I don't think I've ever properly listened to the lyrics of this song, but I've heard it so many times, and it reminds me of, I don't even know when this came out. It had to be the 2010s, maybe. Yeah. So the song goes, you may have the money, but you've got to go. It's sensible, it's sensible. And those endless seasons that go on, incredible. But I'd sooner get out and remember where we went last year. You said everything about it moved on your career. If you want to go, I'll take you back one day. Because this isn't Paris and this isn't London and it's not Berlin and it's not Hong Kong, not Tokyo. If you want to go, I'll take you back one day. It feels so good in the Bay. You may have the body, but do you have the song? Let's make this happen. Let's make this happen. And those endless beaches that go on, it's magical. And then it repeats. And the essence of the song, I think it's kind of literal. It feels like someone that's talking, maybe context clues tell me that it's someone who's maybe talking to a lover or a friend about going on some type of trip. And they're naming all these like extravagant places, Paris, London, Berlin, Hong Kong, Tokyo. But they want to go back to the Bay, which feels practical and sensible. And so that's a sort of like Seven of Pentacles move to go to a place that you already know, that you know brings joy, that you know brings a sense of maybe peace and happiness and pleasure, and dismissing these more extravagant places that are kind of like exorbitant and impractical. This is the sensible choice, and it's also one that delivers results. You've already seen the results, and that feels very Seven of Pentacles too. Like putting in the effort, making practical choices that support your well-being and not extravagant ones that might be hit or miss. Maybe you won't even like Paris. Maybe you'll hate Berlin. Maybe it'll be like a terrible storm in Hong Kong if you go, but there's this sort of assurance that comes from the Seven of Pentacles choice, again, to choose a place that feels reliable. And that's very Taurus and Saturn too, is making a reliable, steady choice, but one that also brings pleasure, one that brings results, one that brings goodness. And this line that's like, you may have the body, but do you have the song? Let's make this happen. Let's make this happen. And those endless beaches that go on, it's magical. So I don't know about that, but do you have the song? That's not really hitting for me. But the let's make this happen and those endless beaches that go on, it's magical. Like there's this intention that's going into that. Let's make this happen. Let's make this happen. Those endless beaches, again, a place where they've already been, but that also promises a lot of magic and beauty, is the choice. And it feels steady, consistent, and like the magic is sort of never ending, and like they can always go back there. It's always there for them. They've already been there and they're ready to go back one day, and they've set their sights on it and they've said it out loud, and then they've maybe called upon this other person or their guides or just themselves and said, let's make it happen. Let's do this thing. And so there's also a sense of commitment that I feel coming through from the song and from all of the messages we're getting here, is that, again, like you have to commit to the magic. You take the step, you set the intention, you take the step, and then you commit to it. And that again might mean waiting for someone else to make their move, or waiting for the universe to make their move, or waiting for your guides to do something, to intervene, to support you, and to help you realize what it is that you want. All right, y'all, kind of a shorter episode tonight, which feels right because this Neptunian haze is very tiresome. I hope you're resting and maybe kind of staying away from unnecessary confusion because there's a lot of it in the air this week. Sending you love, and as always, if you have feedback, that's more than welcome. Your ratings are always appreciated, super, super appreciated, as is your audience ship. All right, take care, y'all.